With great power comes great responsibility. How many of you know where those wise words come from? What book? Exactly. The great power I want to talk to you about today is the power of mobile technology. It's transformed our lives. If you think about a minute how often we use it every single day, sometimes a bit obsessively. Many of you are using it right now. There's an app for everything nowadays. It's just made our lives so convenient and easy. For every little thing, there's an app. You don't have money for the parking meter? There's an app for that. If you want to book a hotel room or a restaurant, there's an app for that. If you want to get a taxi and you stand on the street with your arm up, you risk looking like a Luddite. There's an app for that, man. Use it. There's even an app to help you track how often you go to the toilet, if you're into that kind of thing. It's called Bowel Mover Pro. And what I love about that is the pro, because it's for the professional pooper. But this very same powerful technology can be used to make the world a better place. For what for us is a convenience can be a life changer for people in the developing world. And I think it's our responsibility to harness this power for good, to use it to address some of the biggest problems facing the world today. I'm going to talk a bit about the problem of illiteracy. There are 774 million people on this planet who cannot read or write. 2/3 of them are women. And despite all of the work we've done over the past 20 years, illiteracy in Sub Saharan Africa has actually increased by 37%. I'm going to show you today how the small mobile phone can be used as kryptonite to obliterate ignorance and illiteracy in every corner of the planet. If we look at the barriers to literacy, one of the biggest is the lack of books and reading materials. In many places in the world, there are no books. It's hard for us to imagine. To learn to read, you need books. That's obvious. And you just don't need a few books, you need a lot of books. Think about how many books you have read or have been read to you over your lifetime to bring you to this moment in your life as a fully literate critical thinker. It would be in the high hundreds, at least. And you just don't need any books. You need the right books. The right books are books in your language, they're books at your level, and books above your level so you can progress. You need books that interest you, and what interests you doesn't interest you, and what interests you doesn't interest me. So you need a large variety of books. It's nice to have books that are relevant to your life. The journey of literacy, from learning to read, to reading to learn, and reading to enjoy, is a long one, and it is paved with many, many books. To show you how difficult and challenging this journey is for many people living in rural parts of the developing world, let's just look at one little girl. Let's call her Akeyo. Akeyo lives in a small village 100 kilometers outside of Kisumu City in a village called Luanda Kotieno. It's near Lake Victoria, and so Akeyo's parents are probably fishermen, and they're poor. And in the home, Akeyo and her family speak a language called Daluo, and everyone in the village speaks Daluo, and Akeyo has no access or no exposure to any other language. And when Akeyo is 5 years old, she will go to school, and she'll turn up on her first day, and she'll be taught in English, a new language. That's okay, kids can learn new languages. At the same time, Akeyo is going to learn Kiswahili, another new language. And simultaneously, Akeyo will begin her journey of learning to read in English and Kiswahili, her second and third languages. If that weren't daunting enough, she's going to have to do it all with no books, or with very few books, none of which will be in Daluo, her mother tongue. There are no books in her home. There's no school library, there's no community library. But there is one of these, because her father has one. And that has the potential to change everything, because now Akeyo can have access to books and educational materials. She can access children's books and leveled readers in English, in Kiswahili, and in Deluo. For hundreds of millions of people like Akeyo around the world do not have access to books and reading materials, but they do have mobile phones. Over half of the world's population now has access to an active mobile phone. They don't have iPhones like you and I have. They will soon, one day. But right now they have feature phones. Do you remember these? We all had them before Steve Jobs changed our lives. They're small, they're rugged, they're inexpensive. They can connect to the internet. They can download and use some applications. Critically, for those like Akeyo and her family that don't have access to reliable power, they have a 3-week battery life. Don't you wish our iPhones had that? That's the one thing I do miss about these phones. There are so many trends working in our favor right now. Phones are becoming cheaper and smarter. The mobile internet infrastructure is growing rapidly, expanding the reach into the rural areas and increasing capacity, driving data costs down. Facebook and Twitter are showing people that these phones can be used for much more than just making calls and sending SMSs. Digital publishing, ebooks, means that it's, for the first time, it's feasible to publish and distribute books in indigenous languages. And the cloud enables us to store all this material and content remotely and serve it up bit by bit to these small capacity, low memory phones. There are a lot of organizations working today in this space called M-Reading or M-Education. And I don't have time to tell you about them all, but if you go online and you look up M-Reading or M-Education, you'll discover a plethora of information and research on the subject, and I encourage you to do so. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Worldreader. Worldreader is an NGO started right here in Barcelona 5 years ago, and we develop applications for these very phones. And through these applications, we give people access to books and reading materials, to an enormous digital library of tens of thousands of books, not just any books, the right books, across languages and levels and genres. Now, some of you might be saying at this point, who's going to read on a mobile phone that small? But imagine for a minute that you didn't have books, and you didn't have a Kindle and an iPad, an iPhone. All you had was this. Then you would read on it. And in fact, over 2.5 million people have read on these small phones on Worldreader Mobile over the past 2 years. They're reading short stories and health information and textbooks and full-length novels. Our readers actually spent, just in 2014, over 1,113,000 hours reading, and that's the equivalent of 127 years reading. And we can do so much more than just deliver content. This technology allows us to engage and interact with people and drive learning. To just give you one example of something that's possible, I often engage with our readers over Twitter. And on Christmas morning, I got a tweet from a young man in Nigeria, Mohammed, saying, "At Lizzie Wood, what book shall I read now?" And so I told him, "Mohammed, why don't you try The Girl with the Magic Hands by Nigerian author Nnedi Okorafor." He then asked me, "At Lizzie Wood, what are the lessons of this book?" And like a good librarian, I said, "Mohammed, you need to tell me the lessons of the book. Read it and tell me the lessons." And then something really cool happened. The author, Nnedi Okorafor, chimes in and starts having a dialogue with Mohammed about her books. I think that's just so cool. Here you have a prize-winning Nigerian author living in the United States, and she's having a conversation about her books with a young boy in Nigeria. The next day, Mohammed tweets, "I'm reading The Girl with the Magic Hands by Nnedi Okorafor." So that's pretty powerful, and it's just an example of what's possible. And I'd like you all to think about what's possible and to think about the ideas for peer-to-peer learning, for remote tutoring. If you're passionate about education, or if you're like me and you can't imagine a world without books, get involved. There's so many things you can do, or start something new. The technology is becoming more and more powerful and more ubiquitous every day. I think that literacy and education are superpowers, that we are all lucky enough to have them. And if we work together, we now have a new tool that can help us make sure that everyone on the planet has them too.